Hey everyone, my name is Costas and welcome back to Legal Talk, where we provide general legal information for the everyday landlord. Today, I want to talk to you guys about the N12, how to use it and when to use it. Now, for the purpose of this video, we're only going to go over the basics and talk about the most common use of the N12 for properties no larger than a triplex and for tenants whose lease is month to month. The N12 is a notice to end your tenancy because the landlord, purchaser, or a family member wishes to take personal possession of the property or unit. You can serve an N12 to the tenant for either of the following reasons. The first reason is if you, an immediate family member, or a person who provides care services to you, wants to move into the rental unit and occupy it for at least 1 year. The second reason is the same as the first, but for a new buyer. In other words, the buyer or the immediate family members of the caregivers could take possession. If you are giving this notice for the first reason, you have to either pay the tenant 1 month's rent on or before the termination date, or offer them an alternative agreeable place to move. When compensating the tenant, it must be paid on or before the termination date in the notice. I recommend paying on the termination date in a cash for keys manner to avoid having paid your tenant to only later have them refuse to leave. Now, on the other hand, if you're serving the tenant for the second reason, you're not required to pay the tenant any compensation, but it must be indicated as part of your purchase of sale agreement or in the form of an affidavit attached in your sale. Let's talk about filling out the actual form. Make sure to fill in the name of the tenant to whom you want to give the notice. If there is more than one tenant living in the rental unit, fill in the names of all the tenants. You may fill in your name as the landlord, but if there is more than one landlord, you should fill in the names of all the landlords. Now, please remember, you can only give this notice if you're an individual. A corporation who owns a rental unit cannot give a notice of termination for this reason. Under address of the rental unit, fill in the complete address of the rental unit, including the unit number or the apartment or suite number and the postal code. If the apartments are not clearly labeled, it is always pretty safe to go with what is indicated on the lease agreement. Under the termination date, you must indicate the date to be at least 60 days after the date that you give the tenant this notice. Also, the date must be on the last day of the rental period, or if the tenancy is for a fixed term, the last day of the fixed term. So if you serve the notice on March 15th, your termination must be set for the end of April, assuming your tenancy cycles to the first of each month. And just like with all other forms, do not include the date you are giving the notice to the tenant when counting the days to issue the termination date. Under my reason for ending your tenancy, shade the circle completely next to the reason for giving the tenant this notice. Then shade the box next to the person who intends to move into the rental unit. And finally, fill in your information at the bottom and include the date you are serving the notice. All right, everyone, to wrap things up, please remember you can't serve your tenant by posting the notice on the door. It must be hand-delivered or put in the mail. If you are worried about your tenant not complying with the N12, you can apply to the tribunal immediately after serving the notice and getting an order for the termination date, assuming everything was filed correctly. Don't forget the certificate of service. This will allow you to call a sheriff if your tenant refuses to leave by the date on the order. But what happens if you as the landlord don't take possession? What happens if your tenant is under a 12-month lease term? What are some ways your tenant can fight your notice? These are all really great questions that can create some serious complications to you using the N12. For an in-depth look answering these questions, please check out N12 Complications video with more detailed explanations. If you want to know how to file the subsequent L forms, see our other videos called Filing an L form with the Tribunal. All right, everyone, I hope this has helped you understand how to properly use the N12 form. If you have any questions, contact us through the information, all linked in the description below. Follow our socials and subscribe to our channel.